Are we live? I do hear you, Rob. I wonder if you can hear me. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm not. So I feel compelled to switch tabs and make sure that we're actually doing anything.
Here we go. Good thing I asked because apparently I was muted. So there we
Oh,
go.
well, okay. I heard you fine,
Yeah.
Rob. Well, just so
We'll just go that way.
Songbirder and I are having a fine conversation, friends.
There you go.
Okay,
Oh my
let's
God.
make sure. Okay, let's get chat's opinion on this.
Yeah.
Do you hear CB at this time? And do you hear Songbirder at this time? Yes or no? I guess we have to wait, right? We have to wait for the lag. All right,
to
good.
wait for the poll.
Thank you, Rose.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. So this is my first time doing a bird-related, well, the first time using guest star for Twitch, which is what we're using right now. First time doing a bird-related stream that has other people in it. I've done other streams with other people, but there was always game-related. So that's really fun. And yeah, welcome in everybody. For those who might be regulars on my channel, the alerts are off and yes, hello, etc. So there won't be any, I have a thing on my channel where normally using an emote of mine triggers a bird sound of some kind. So that's off for tonight just so we're not disrupted and all that. So it's, it's going to be nice and quiet until we get to listening to some bird songs and stuff like that. So I'm Rob, Songbirder on Twitch, and Kamal, CaliforniaBirbs. Can you tell me quick short thing about your stream, which is actually in your background too, which is funny?
I can, right. I in order to make it as easy as possible, here, let me tell you about my stream. Here, it's that thing right there. So yeah, hello friends, my name's Kamal, and on Twitch and the bird enthusiast community here, I'm CaliforniaBirbs, and that's the description of my stream. That's what my stream is. That's what it's all about. It's Birbs in California. We stream 24/7 the birds and other wildlife that come by and visit my back patio here, and it's a good community of friends, and we enjoy identifying new ones and trying to figure out what's what, and it's all very friendly. Like I said, we're mostly casual bird enthusiasts. We've tricked a few real birders into joining our gang.
Yeah.
We needed it, to get the actual confirmations as to what we were seeing.
So that does help.
So that's my stream.
Nice. And you've been going for over a year now, right? So
about 17 months now.
17 months. Wow. Awesome. So my stream, I'm a variety streamer. I did come to Twitch originally for bird streaming, actually, because I produced the podcast Songbirding, which is entirely recorded outdoors. I'm out with the birds recording their songs and kind of annotating along the way. And one of the things I thought might be a logical step that I could take next was to do some kind of live stream thing. There isn't much out there for audio live streams though, and the cell coverage in country is not great sometimes, but I still, eventually is okay, I'll look at Twitch and try some things, and I tried a few things, and then I got into a bit of the gaming stuff, so that at first it was kind of well, I want to be able to get used to being on camera for one thing, or having a camera and all that kind of stuff, and just get used to the idea of what is a live stream like, because it's very different than something like a podcast where I can just edit everything after, cut that last part, I can't do that, right?
Yeah, you don't know how much babbling I would have cut if I had the chance.
Exactly. So it's that kind of stuff is just it's a little different. So yeah, that's where I came from, and I found a wonderful retro gaming community that I get along with great while doing that, which was amazing. And the thing that surprised me the most, actually, when I went through all this, is I really had a thing going in my head going, should I have two channels? Should I have, the songbirding stuff and the game stuff? And I really went back and forth in my brain a lot about that one, because I've previous ventures on social media, I always separated things, but I discovered along the way what was really interesting was that a lot of the retro gaming people started showing up in the birding streams. So I was well, this is outreach at the same time. This is kind of neat. You get people telling me what birds they're seeing, asking questions, and so on. So that's one of the neat things I found about Twitch so far.
Yeah, I have to agree. My personal interests of watching folks and listening to folks play live music and do artwork. Sure, it just so happens that we've got a lot of crossover in our stream too of artists and musicians. And I suppose it's no accident, right? Those are the streams that I watch. So it is a lot of fun to share my interests and learn about the common interests of the good friends that I've made over at CaliforniaBirbs. I've sure learned a lot of neat stuff that really has nothing to do with birds.
Yeah, so. Me too. You mentioned music. Yeah, I found so many great musicians on Twitch as well too. It's amazing the types of things you come across, and artists. And yeah, I've been really enjoying it. So yeah, one of the things we're going to be going over tonight is that part of the reason I asked you in here, you know some Western birds a little bit because you live in the West. And I'm going to be doing a trip out west to Alberta soon. So one of the ideas I had for a first guest star stream was get someone who has experience with some Western birds, even if not with songs specifically. We can still at least have some discussion around hey, have you seen this before or are you not? I know some of the ones on our list are ones that you have had in your stream even, which is pretty fun. And for me, it helped me a lot to learn some of those Western birds through discussion, conversation, that kind of thing. So that's kind of our aim tonight, is going through that stuff. And
well, I tell you, my experience with them has been limited to the time I've spent on my patio, and what I've learned about them is mostly from what I've learned from folks on the stream and about bird songs in particular. This is something I've mentioned to you before, Rob.
Yeah.
I find that I've just got no knack whatsoever for memorizing bird songs. I'm obviously interested in it. I want to do it. I hear plenty of bird songs all day long, but even the common ones, even birds that I see every single day and try to go out of my way to memorize their songs, after a few days, I'll hear that same song again and I'll go, oh, what was that again? It's the Junco, So I'm fascinated. One of the reasons I'm fascinated by your stream is that you do seem, and not that you're the only one, but you can seem to remember. You just have a memory for them. And that's something I've never been able to cultivate and something I would like to be able to do. So if it's something that you can give me tips to practice.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of years now to think about how people learn song, how people learn bird song and how they learn things. One example I use sometimes, I don't know if I used this one in the presentation you might have seen a few months ago or not, but it's a fun one that's useful for something like Twitch, especially because it's got a lot of gaming stuff in it. But first, I'll ask if you're even familiar with this first, though. Do you remember the very first Super Mario Brothers game? You ever played that one?
I think I remember the sound effects.
Okay, there you go. Oh my gosh. So if you heard a Mario sound effect, like a jump, you would remember that, right? You would go, I see
where you're going with it, but I will I have to associate it with how many points that would have earned me in Super Mario Brothers?
Well,
do I have to pick a game that I'm more familiar with?
Well, just the fact that alone, if I did play a Mario sound, you would recognize that was from Mario, right?
I would.
Yeah,
I would.
And that's one of the examples I like to use. Yeah.
See, we should have planned ahead, Rob. We should be able to play that sound effect.
Yeah,
now.
I should have set that up. I hadn't thought of that before, but that we'll do that next time maybe. But
no, go ahead.
The other example I use with people, and that was just kind of a good Twitch one, but is let's say you hear a lawnmower in the distance, and then you hear a weed whacker, and then you hear a motorcycle. Those all three probably sound different in your head, right?
Sure.
They're all just two-stroke engines for the most part. And yet you...
Okay, but you're right. I can identify which one is which.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to liken that to around here, there's 4 species of vireo, but there are 3 that sound alike. And I liken it to something like that, where, okay, if you know this red-eyed vireo, which goes on and on and on and on all day for several months out in the forest, that anytime you're hiking, you probably hear it when you live around here. If you know that song, and then you hear a blue-headed vireo, you'll notice, oh, wait, that's a little sweeter sounding. It's not singing as often. Like, there's just all these qualities. It's the same song, more or less, but it's just a little sweeter. So it's like the comparison between the weed whacker and the lawnmower, maybe. Or you got, like, you know, a yellow-throated vireo, which is very throaty and very deep sounding, but the same song. So maybe it's like that rev of a motorcycle or something. Like, that's the kind of thing I like to give as examples, and it's partly because, you know, a lot of exposure to those things growing up, probably, and over time, and you're given context of it all the time. It works really well in video games because, you know, after you hear it a few times, it's baked into your brain, you know, and all that. But also, my personal theory is because you have a story about it now. You've accumulated these stories about these things, these objects. You know, maybe by now you've forgotten the first few lawnmowers you've ever heard or anything like that, and they're long gone. But it's deep in your brain now because of it just keeps being reinforced. And so that's partly what. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I've got a question for you though, Rob.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's like I hear what you're saying, but it's like, okay, but I've been listening to birds for 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's happening, like that reinforcement isn't occurring. It's still the case. And it's still the case that I can hear a junco, I can hear a spotted towhee.
Yeah.
A few days later, I hear those two things, and you know, yeah, I know, yeah, that's a bird I hear on the patio all the time, but I can't remember which one is which. My question for you is, when did you start listening to bird songs and thinking about what bird those were? Was it when you were younger? Was it when you were in your language forming phase?
Yes and no. So yes, in the sense of, like, when I was 7, 8, 9, I definitely learned some of them because on the farm, I grew up in a farm, and we were just, you know, you just see so many things, right? And you hear so many things, and I didn't have binoculars or anything like that, but like certain things, I just had a drive to go find what that was. And part of my theory about how this works for people, because I did not learn a lot of songs outside of those that I was exposed to a lot on the farm until much, much later. And that was maybe around 2010, 2011, 2012, when I believe it was 2011 or so, we had this song in our backyard, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, it's not just I don't know what species that is. It's just like, that's a song I've never heard before. And that drove me to try to find what it was. And my theory behind that one was that, you know, once I learned it, it took forever to figure out what it was because we didn't have Merlin or anything like that, right? Couldn't put that out to say. I had to go through, and I did have an app, but I had to go through every single species and hit play
each sample.
And I didn't have a recording of the bird either. I just had to remember what it was. So it took me a long time. And because I think through that struggle and that long time, that's part of a narrative, a story that says, okay, now I'm going to remember that one because I struggled to learn it. I spent the time to try to figure out what it was. And my theory about other birds that I've learned over time is a lot of them are cases of, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to go track it down and figure out what it is. And enough of that over time, it gets in your brain a little bit, but I'll tell you the thing that really drove it over the edge is go out there and record stuff. And go out there and then do a podcast
Listen to
of
the
it.
sound sample over and over.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll mention this. I'll mention this too. And we should get to this at some point along the line. We should stop yapping and actually.
We're going to get to some species shortly.
Because this isn't really just old guys talking about bird songs. Maybe it is. Maybe that's what you wanted here. Yeah.
It could be anything. That's why I said this is really nice, free flowing too.
Well, I was going to say that looking at the spectrograms adds a dimension of it for me. And I haven't figured out how to apply this yet, but I feel like somehow if I was to watch them and look at their spectrograms, that might somehow help me memorize what they are.
I've spent
it's not like I'm going to be able to look at them while I'm out there, but just the act of like you were saying, putting the effort into studying it, maybe will help commit it in the way that they say that a way to study just about anything is
Yep.
to write it down, just to
Exactly.
copy the text out of your textbook. The act of writing it
Yep.
commits it to a different part of your brain.
So, and that's like you're transferring one type of thing to another, and like it was mentioned in chat just earlier. It was mentioned in chat earlier that like some people are more visual learners. They may not be auditory learners, right? And there's different ways of learning things over time. Like maybe that, for example, for me, the act of me recording a podcast out in the field where I had to say boldly what I thought that species was at the time,
Right.
and then go back later and check it. Now, I barely am ever going to remember the ones that I got right, but I'm for sure going to remember the ones I got wrong, right? Because I just wasted a lot of time. I'm going to have to edit around it, or I'm going to have to make it a discussion point in the podcast, which I've done before, because sometimes that's interesting, like to say, hey, I got it wrong. Other people could get this wrong too. Let's discuss why.
Well, yeah, I get a lot of stuff wrong on my stream, and you got a point there. Those are the things that I think, man, that was embarrassing.
And that's okay.
Let me Google that. Let me read up a little bit more on when turkey season actually is.
Yeah, exactly. And like part of why I think
I got to stop you though.
Yeah.
No, we're not reading chat. Not too tired. We're making fun of each other here.
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyway, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, one last point, and then we'll get to some birds. My theory on learning just about anything, a lot of it has to do with feedback loops. Like learning birding 20, 30 years ago would have been so much harder because you wouldn't have these things that give you immediate feedback. You couldn't record a sound and get an answer in seconds. 10 years ago, you could get a minute answer maybe in minutes if you sent it to the right person. You can't get a photo. Back in the, let's say, 90s, you wouldn't be getting photos of birds close up to ask someone later, what was that? You were probably writing down notes and then calling someone up and saying, this is what I saw, and they'd be asking you questions that you probably didn't have the answers to about its behavior and things like that. There'd just be this super
posted to a Reddit stream.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be super long, super elongated, like feedback loop that you may have forgotten by the time you get to the end of it what it was like to see the bird in the first place. And so, like, I think things like that have helped a lot drive birding in the most recent times. So, and hopefully do the same with birdsong. So I wanted to start with, so one of the things I did was took the checklists of the place I'm going, which is near Banff, Alberta. It's called Kananaskis Country, but on eBird, it's considered part of Banff. And a lot of people in the stream probably will know, or in chat will probably know where Banff is. It's a West Coast location. Well, not West Coast, it's interior location, I should say, but Western North America. And there's a lot of species there that I just don't know. And thankfully we have Merlin for one thing, but I'd also like to learn a few things in advance just to test my own theories about how one learns bird songs. Because just to give a little context, life lists on Merlin right now. The last time I saw a new species to me was 2021. That's the last time I saw a new species. Last time I heard a new songbird to me was also 2021, and before that it was in the 2019.
I think for me it's like last month. So.
Yeah. So it's like now I have to learn new things. And so I'd like to go through and we'll just spend a few minutes going through some species that are common to where you're at and some of them that you have on your stream even, and maybe just take a look at those songs, and we'll do that a little bit of visual and a little bit of let's listen to the audio and see what it's like kind of thing. And one of the things that's common, and this is something I do get locally too, but there's going to be a different subspecies where I'm going is this lovely dark-eyed junco, which you get the Oregon junco where you're at, the subspecies, whereas I get the slate-colored junco around here, this lovely one. But
so beautiful.
But I could get an Oregon junco where I'm going too.
We got a junco party going on in chat.
This is the junco jam. Exactly. Oh, am I not logged in?
You think you might see both? And Rob, would you see them? Would you expect to see them together, or
probably not together, but you might end up hearing them together? And this is where I'm curious. Let's see how many of these are labeled correctly. So I'm just going to play that, so see what you think.
That's that sound. That's that one where I say to myself, what's that bird? That common bird I hear all the time on my patio.
So does that sound like the Oregon one then? I didn't check in advance how much they are similar, but I would imagine they probably have a similar song.
Well, it's sure similar enough that
there's a fast one there.
See, that sounds different to me. That does not sound familiar to me.
Okay. Oh, this is
so if I had to bet my peanut points.
Oh, you know what? This is pulling my recording, so this is why. This is from Allegheny. This is my own recording. This one, which we just listened to, also from Allegheny, same species. So around here, they do vary their speed on how they sing. But look at the spectrograph. You know?
It's certainly a distinctive, similar shape.
Yeah. And then you go here.
Yeah, that's quite different looking.
Yep. Same species, though. How about this one? The only thing they have common, really, is they have this trill to them that seems to stick to this kind of frequency. Definitely a repeating phrase.
Mm-hmm. And about the same length. I mean, would you say that's common to juncos, that it's normally about, what is that, 8 or 10?
Yep.
What would you call that? Beats? 8 or 10?
That's a good question,
chirps?
Actually. I never thought about that. So let's count here. 4, 8, 10. So there's 10 to that one. What's this one got? This has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on this one. Iterations. And here's another weird one. This one's more of a trill. They're being funny about it.
Yeah, that's different.
So this one is from farther north. This is in the Niagara Escarpment. I recognize this one from when I recorded it, actually. This was the very first dark-eyed junco I ever recorded. 2017. I ever got an audio recording of. Because I actually didn't know what I was hearing at the time. Because what happens around here is juncos show up at our feeders in the winter, and then they vanish the rest of the year where I live. Now, what I've found out since is most of them go much further north. Some of them breed south of us. They don't go south for the, summer, but what happens is we're just in a gap area where they don't really breed around here. They'll either breed north of us or south of us, and we're just this weird gap in southern Ontario where they just don't want anything to do with us, which there's actually several species like that, which is really interesting. And I think it has to do both with what humans have done to this region and just with the unique habitat of being surrounded by giant lakes, of being very, very humid.
I find
here.
that with juncos, folks are often surprised that we've got juncos here in Central California all year round. But I guess the climate is just good enough that they don't feel compelled to fly north.
Let's take a look at an Oregon junco here. Does that sound familiar to you, that style?
It does, but that's fast. That's faster than the ones I'm used to hearing here.
So I've never really studied what, the difference between the rate the junco does their song at. And sometimes I wonder if, is it context? Is it when they're at the feeder, they're at a different kind of song than when they're in deep forest or near a river or something? This is why it's kind of fascinating to chat with someone on it, because I can think about these things now with the questions you're posing. How's that?
That sounds more classically.
This one's from actual Oregon.
Like a classic.
This is in Corvallis, Oregon. So it's this classic trill. I haven't gotten around to teaching people directly dark-eyed junco very much, because around here when I lead outings, we never have breeding dark-eyed juncos, so I never have to actually talk to people about that much. But are you familiar with the trill complex? I usually call it this, but I don't even know if it's an official term or not, so... And by trill complex, no. By trill complex, I mean that there are several birds that sound like this. So the chipping sparrow has a very similar song. Swamp sparrow, orange-crowned warbler too, and there's a West Coast one for you, because the other ones I mentioned are East Coast. And actually, on my list of things for us to maybe look at, maybe it would make sense for me to pull up orange. Have you ever had an orange-crowned warbler at your feeder?
No.
You do get them in your area, apparently.
We've seen yellow rumped warbler is the only warbler I've ever seen here. So let me take a pause though.
Yeah.
To mention this, you suggested that there's whole groups of birds that have a similar sounding, or song, or similar structure to their song. At least that's something I don't think I ever really knew or thought about, and that alone would be a great starting place to start learning, okay, which one is that? Which class of things is that? So, and you've used the word trill lots of times. So, I think that's
my musical background,
musical term or a singing term.
Yeah.
But is that officially like, that's one of the trilling class?
As far as I know, okay, it is something I see.
Well, whether or not it's officially that or not, that's very interesting to know that, someone who listens to a lot of bird songs classifies them into major groupings like that.
Yeah, definitely.
What are some examples of other groups? Like, what would you say the screaming jay? That's clearly not a trill.
No, and that's where you get...
What group is that?
Because it's so unique around here, I don't really group it with much, because around here we have the blue jay, and that's about it when it comes to screams like that. Maybe you'll occasionally get a mockingbird or something like that, but it'll follow up with all kinds of other sounds. One I can think of, though, which isn't in my list of things, but this is a good thing to go over, is the American robin. I don't know if you get American robins there, do you?
Yes.
Okay.
We do. But so, I could not, for the life of you, I have no idea what they sound like.
Okay. So if you lived...
I'm sure I've heard it 100 times.
If you lived in an urban area where they wake you up first thing in the morning, you would know. Because they're notorious for that, because they will wake up from street lights at 2 a.m. Like, they'll just be like, these street lights are enough light for us to start singing. And that happens around here. So you get to know the robin because they're kind of this incessant thing that wakes you up in the morning. Way too early if you're, got your window open. But they have, there are species that aren't related to them, but have very similar songs. So around here we have the rose-breasted grosbeak, which sounds... We often say it's like a robin that has taken singing lessons, because it sounds far more pleasant, far more sonorous, less dissonance to the song, because the robin has a bit of touch of dissonance in it. It's got some contrasting chords going, because it's a thrush, and thrush have these double, I forget what they call it, but it's kind of a double throat thing going on where they can do two notes at the same time in their throat. A lot of thrushes have that. And then you can go in the other direction and go, a robin that has a sore throat is the scarlet tanager.
Huh. And what would you describe, and if you had to give one word to that class of bird songs?
I would just call them a robin complex. I would just say that.
Robin sounding birds.
Yeah, exactly. It's useful in a region like this where we get those three. It may not be as useful to you, though, because you don't get two of those species out there. So I don't think you get rose-breasted grosbeak or scarlet tanager out there.
We do get grosbeaks, and I what do we got? We got a western tanager out here. Yeah. So I'm just guessing here. Could I guess that the western tanager and the black-headed grosbeak should also be of that same class?
Let's take a look, because both of those are on my list, so coincidentally. Okay. So let's see. Okay. We'll see if this is a song or call. I'm not sure. So this is the call. That's a robin in there too. That's funny. Yeah, these are calls. Let's see. See if we can find some songs, but those sound similar to scarlet tanager calls to me.
Certainly much more melodic than any junco I've ever heard.
It's very close to robin though, like even the call, so that's interesting. So if you know a robin, that's just slightly more dissonant. This is interesting to me, because what I'm hearing in that There's one more coming up. So what that sounds like to me is like an in-between, if you were to make a spectrum, between an American robin and a scarlet tanager.
Okay.
It's not.
And that's the Western tanager.
That's the Western tanager. That's interesting.
Got it.
See, this is the kind of thing I was hoping to get out of this, is just like ways that I can remember these things. So let's look up the scarlet tanager so you get to hear what is the difference. And we'll see if we can get some. Yeah, here's one right here. You can hear that's just a bit more dissonant.
I sure hear the similarity. I hear the similarity right away.
Yeah.
I can see it too. I mean, look at the spectrograph, right? That.
Yep.
The tilde with the big part at the beginning kind of thing.
There's a bit more oomph to it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And let's just wrap this up with an American robin. See if we can find the similar. That looks, well, this one looks better. A little bit of song in this. But you can see the call in there, that really dark one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a little more melodic, a little more tonal. But here's the other thing that's really different with it, and that we're not seeing in this, and we aren't going to see in this, is the habitat you're going to find these species in. So you could find this robin in outside my window, up on a hydropole. You could have one in your backyard somewhere. You're probably not going to have a scarlet tanager. Well, you won't, but you wouldn't have a tanager at all except during migration, likely. You might have a brief time in your migration, but what you would expect, and maybe this is something we could look up, what I would expect from a Western tanager, and I'm going to guess here, is that it's probably a lot like scarlet tanager. We're going to find it up in the canopy. It's going to be hiding. We're not going to be able to see it usually, because scarlet tanagers, even though they're super bright to the point they almost look unrealistically bright, they bring their own lighting. Like if anytime I've taken a photo of one, it just looks like someone messed with the camera and like the settings were wrong.
The Western tanager,
someone turned up the saturation over the top.
It's this effect basically.
Yeah. So Western tanager are more yellow, whereas the scarlet's all scarlet, just super bright. But what I'm curious about is what they say about open coniferous mixed woodlands. Yeah, quintessential element of Western forests. Not usually conspicuous.
Yeah, when we've seen them, it's been brief visits.
Yeah.
They appear at the fountain and disappear again.
Yeah.
It's only been for a couple of days at a time at best.
Yeah. So these are probably canopy dwellers as well. They're probably
so now that you show a picture of that Western tanager, well, I mean, look, there's that.
Yeah.
I mean, let me just take a moment to notice what a beautiful bird is.
I know.
But it's got a robin beak, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got a beak similar to a robin.
A little thicker, but close. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying the general shape, the fact that it's not a finch beak.
Yeah.
It's a robinish beak if I had to put it at the same size and pointiness in general.
Yeah.
Is it reasonable to guess that as a general rule, birds with similarly shaped beaks are going to have similar sounds, or is it not?
I don't know.
So consistent.
I don't think I haven't thought about that much. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm trying to make an association. Well, now that I've got this association, I feel like I learned something major today.
Yeah.
Is that Western tanager and robin sound similar, and all tanagers sound similar to robins.
Yeah. So here's this is the scarlet tanager, just to show you how the joke I always love is that you could also, so there's two other alternative names that are just kind of joke names. One of them is the sore-throated robin. It's one of my favorites because that's what it sounds like. The other is the black-winged redbird.
That's great. That's great. Wow. I hadn't thought about it, but there it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a beautiful bird too.
Yeah.
There's one I sure wish I wish we could see here.
Yeah.
I think I'd be wishing a little too much though.
So you mentioned.
So okay,
Yeah.
I got one more question for you though.
Yeah.
All right. Now that I'm locked on to this idea of bird songs being groupable, not just you have to memorize each random individual one.
Yes.
And match it to the bird. That there's groups of them to be thought of. Dark-eyed junco. Let's go back to dark-eyed junco. What's another bird that you can think of that you would say? Name me some more birds that are in that trilling group. In particular, if you can think of one that I might have.
Well, what you'd have would be the orange-crowned warbler. I recall that that's more a kind of a trilling bird. So let me see if I have not recorded audio of it. No, but there should be.
Green Herring mentioned that we saw a Townsend's warbler a couple of times too.
That's on my hit list for sure. Because they are very similar to black-throated green warblers. And I got to see sounds. There we go. Let's see if they have a look at that. So it's not as straight.
There it is. Look, we don't. You know what? We don't even need to listen to it.
I know.
There it is. That's the same picture that we were looking at with the
Now
juncos.
there's a wave to this, so that tells me this is not going to be a consistent trill.
Right. But I see the trill.
Yeah. So now, do they have audio?
That's very interesting.
If they don't have audio here, we'll just go down and.
Well, you've got one, right?
Oh, well, I haven't recorded one, but I can get one off
of
here.
Okay.
Let's see.
I guess that's good enough.
Orange-crowned warbler. This is why I'm going out west, so I can get recordings.
I guess. I don't know. On my stream, I don't just put up a picture of a quail.
So there we go. So this one reminds me.
Yeah, I heard it.
This reminds me of yellow-rumped warbler has a similar thing. This particular individual seems to be changing trill frequency at one point, and both the frequency in two ways: how fast it is and how high it is.
Right. So that's great. So okay, I'm gonna say right now that this warbler, which one is this now?
This is the orange crown, but here's one bit more local to you, Colorado. The other one was Alaska, and there can be a lot of regional variation.
Okay.
So it kind of goes up and down. And someone mentioned in chat.
Yeah, but it's got that same thing. Totally, Miss Yvette. I mean, it's. So here's what I want to say: is that the warbler song is like a fancy junco.
Yeah, because he's trying to change his notes.
Okay,
he's trying to go up and down a little bit.
Fancy.
So,
see, this is something that I could imagine memorizing.
Exactly.
You know, warbler is fancy junco, and junco is the thing to memorize. You know, the one I'm going to hear every day.
Change species. This is reminding me of pine warbler, because that's one that I'd like to compare with the junco a lot, because they can be in similar habitats. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but one of the things that can help you differentiate things that sound very similar is just go, well, would one even be here? Because I'm in the middle of a wetland right now. Am I really going to have a junco there? Not in the breeding season, probably. But I would have a swamp sparrow there. Might have a chipping sparrow, but it's probably more likely the swamp. Might have a pine warbler if there's enough pines. So let's go. I have recorded audio of it, apparently. I got one myself.
Did you say earlier that the sparrows are of this trilling class?
There are some sparrows in this trilling class, yeah.
So
chipping
after we're done with this, I want you to locate me.
So listen to that.
Yeah, there's that trill.
I want to find a longer one.
I would like to hear a crowned sparrow, white crowned or golden crowned sparrow song.
So we'll go to that one next. But here's what I have to say about this one, because this one's I got a way to tell them. So we'll let it play one more, and then I'll tell you my trick for these ones. So they sound a little lazy. They fade in and fade out a little bit. This is really consistent with them.
Okay, it's a junco with a fade in.
Yep. And they're also...
And which bird is this? Pine warbler.
Pine warbler. They're also going to be up high in a pine tree or spruce or fir, something like that is the other clue. But it's... I've done it before. Other people have surely done it. It's easy to mistake for a junco with that song.
I bet.
So you were mentioning a white-crowned sparrow?
Sure.
It is on my list for sure.
Now, like I said, I'm so excited about this idea of identifying the birds that have a trilling sound and grouping them together.
Okay, so
I can remember this.
So white-crowned doesn't have as much trilling because they're a bit more singy.
Uh-huh.
But they do have some. Yeah. That's what I remember of them. We need a better recording of one. Oh, wait, there's a... So there's a little bit of a trill theme.
I see it and hear it.
Yep.
It's there. It's that same set of 10-ish notes.
Yep. But it comes after this.
Yeah, after the little song bit. Okay.
Yeah, they have a song and then they do that. Let's get a better example.
I wonder if that's pros too. But do they have a song and then a trill? I'm learning. I'm bear with me, folks. I'm learning.
So this one had a song, then a trill, then a song.
Okay.
Where's that one from? That one's from Washington State. Let's see if I can...
So I got to say, too, this is one more thing that I really, I get a lot out of watching the spectrograms while listening to the songs. And I don't know if this is just me, but being able to see it, it enhances my ability to hear it. Otherwise, I'm just...
Yep.
I don't want to say, oh, I'm hearing noise, like as if I can't distinguish it. It's complex and interesting, but I can't identify it. Looking at it, it's easy to identify. Well, look, I see the little 8 or 10 things.
Yeah.
So
this is the song I'm used to hearing them do. Now, I don't get very many locally because they don't breed here. They just show up in the winter sometimes. And when they're here in the winter, they don't really sing much. It has to be a really good day. But this is what I associate with them, is this kind of dee-doot-doot, and then maybe another doot-doot at the end. Almost like they're replying to themselves. So it's almost like dee-doot.
There's that. Can you zoom it? Can you make that look bigger? Can I see?
Probably can. Yeah. Oops. Uh-oh. Did I... Let's try that again.
Yeah, I'm a visual learner, Pocket Theremin.
I
don't know, you're giving me a lot of credit for being a learner at all here.
Okay, let me see if I can. Let's do that. Can you see?
Yeah,
that go
that's
funny?
getting bigger.
And it went a little funny. There we go. Make it slightly smaller. Go over there. Safari isn't being good to me here. There we go. That's a little bigger.
Yeah, that you can. There's that trill section in there, right in the middle, and it's packed in tight and really fast. But there it is. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, someone in chat was saying you're worried there's going to be a test at the end.
Good. I'm glad, Layla, that it's not just me. Is there going to be a test at the end? Yeah, slow down. I'm trying to take notes. I'm trying to take screenshots for reference. So I don't think Rob would do that to us.
Does that sound familiar, though, that song, to you? Because
you've
had them singing?
Absolutely.
I think I've heard them on your stream.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Again, it's like I was saying, it's not that I hear it and think, gosh, I've never heard that before. I hear it and I think, yep, that's a bird I hear every day.
Yeah.
But which one is it? Is it the junco or is it the white-crowned sparrow?
Yeah.
Or is it a spotted towhee? And like I said, I can tell you it's one of the common ones because I hear it frequently, but not being able to have anything to link it to or memorize it with has been a struggle for me.
I think that's what, perhaps for me, I'm trying to think about why have I learned it, things like that. Partly because I used to be, and I'm starting to try to be again, a very avid e-birder. And I would do checklisting. I would make sure I've written down every bird I've seen in a checklist. But that means I have to make sure I've identified them. So I've kind of forced myself to go, okay, if that song, I don't know it, I got to go find that bird. And eventually the brain goes, I don't want to do that effort to go find that bird. So I just got to learn it.
Right. That makes sense. See, whereas even for me, the idea of identifying the bird is seeing it, not doesn't have to be hearing it. So there's that too. Just a very mental notion of what does it mean to have identified the bird, you know? If I close my eyes, can I identify any of the birds I know? And the answer is, well, no. And that's pretty unsatisfying. So I feel like there's definitely another dimension to it.
Yeah.
And again, not like I don't love to listen to them, but I sure feel like I'm missing a lot when other folks in the stream hear a bird and can know, oh gosh, there's a such and such. We're not seeing it, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't get the joy of knowing that bird is there, but so-and-so did, you know.
It's helped me a ton on leading outings because people are just absolutely floored when I'm like, oh, and we're going to have a red-bellied woodpecker coming up in about 2 minutes. And they're like, wait, how? Did you schedule the bird in advance? Like, how do you know?
release the quail. See, I trick folks that way with my occasional amazing camera switch to the, switch cameras and bam, the raven lands on the rock. It's like, well, I saw it happen 2 seconds earlier. I've got the advantage of Twitch lag.
There you go. Actually, there's a question in chat that's a good one that I commonly get. How do you know if a bird's a mimic versus not a mimic? And my answer usually to that is mimics tend to give themselves away pretty good. I don't know if this is your experience or you've had many mimic species out there in your stream or in your backyard or anything, like mockingbirds, or do you get mynas still in California?
Oh, I don't know if we get them in California, but we sure don't have them on my stream. We've got the Jays. The Jays and their fake hawk calls are the one I think of.
Usually I find that they give themselves away by just rambling on with some other song right immediately after. So our mockingbirds, like if they're doing like a tree swallow sound, immediately it's followed by an eastern towhee sound, and then it almost sounds like there's a cavalcade of birds in the bush over there, and you're like, well, yeah, probably not. But so
that's your trick. If it sounds like there's 25 birds in there, come on, no.
It's partly just it's a waiting game to some extent. Like it'll give itself away eventually because they're not doing it to trick anyone. They're actually just trying. A lot of those species are just showing off. It's a lot of it's like about pairing with a mate by showing off by how many other bird songs you know, therefore you're well traveled and you've seen things, heard things, and you can even mimic those things. Now jays are different because that call they're doing is often got lots of different things going on with it, like their hawk calls. Like around here it's usually red-tailed hawk, but sometimes I have heard them do recently heard one do broadwing hawk, which really surprised me, and red-shouldered hawk I've heard. And it's usually, what I've heard is that sometimes it's used as a warning to say, hey, there's a predator here, so we're just going to make the sound that a predator makes to warn you. Other times they're doing that just to mess with other birds and get them out of there because there's a nice food source, and if they make a hawk sound, they'll leave.
That's what I see. They're trying to clear the patio.
Exactly.
Right. Well, so Miss Yvette, Rob's answers were, well, sometimes they're mimicking too darn many other birds, and so it's obvious that it isn't that going on. My experience with that, with the jays, and folks have, I think folks who are new to CaliforniaBirbs are surprised by this. They'll hear that hawk call and go, oh my gosh, must be a hawk. Doesn't sound anything like a hawk to me, you know?
Yeah.
I think I've heard enough scrub jays that's one that is unmistakably not a hawk to me. That sounds very much like a scrub jay, not like a hawk. And, I can hear it trying to fake it, but it's not fooling me any. It's close, but no cigar kind of thing. Yeah. And I've noticed too that the common birds on the patio are also not fooled by it.
Yeah.
They ignore it completely. It's only maybe baby birds or a bird that is uncommon around here that's going to be fooled by that.
Yeah, exactly.
So to some degree, the mimics are good, but they're not good enough. When you hear them enough times, and maybe it's just that. It's like, look, Scrub Jay, I've heard you do that 100 times. Come on, I've gotten pretty darn used to hearing it.
Around here, it's the starlings doing killdeer sounds. You can tell that they love killdeer sounds. Like, that's their favorite thing.
But is it the same thing that you can pretty easily
Sometimes you can be fooled, because the problem is killdeer do sing when they fly over, as they fly. So you could be somewhere where you'd hear one like coming from a rooftop, that sound, and you think, oh, this killdeer flying by, and then you're waiting, no, that's a starling sitting there just doing some they'll do some starling noises and killdeer noises, but the killdeer noises are just at that frequency that human hearing really, really picks up on it, whereas the other things that mimic are not so sonorous to humans, so it's like it sounds separate.
Well, so there's that too. I mean, we're interpreting this through
Yep.
the frequencies that we're hearing.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe the jays are more convincing to other birds, or less to other birds. But so there's that, and the one more thing about mimics that I find is just the frequency of it. It's like, look, no, there's not a hawk on my patio 25 times a day screaming. That's just not the case. So there's not ever a hawk on my patio screaming. It's going to do that from way, way up high. So so the placement of it is another giveaway.
So
it's just not likely that there's a hawk down there.
I don't want to hit you with too many questions, because I know we want to keep our time limited here, but there was a question in chat about whether the seed you put out attracts certain species. Like, does the seed matter, or is it just the species that you happen to have around?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. It certainly does matter. All the different species, I don't want to say, oh, they'll only eat a certain kind of seed, but they've got their strong preferences. They really do. And I comment on this a lot. When I go out there and put out the seeds, whatever's left over on the ground, I can tell what birds haven't been here because that seed is still there.
Yeah.
And that pattern holds true. But if I wait a little longer, they'll eat it all eventually. They'll clean it up. They just go for their favorites first. Now, that said, I do not put out specific seeds in order to attract specific birds. Really, I've kind of gone out of my way to say, I'm going to put out as much variety as I can to try and kind of, shotgun approach.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I don't want to attract just a certain species. I want to feed whatever's naturally going to be there.
Yeah.
So if I put out a bunch of everything, then everybody's going to get a chance to find some of. And
you'll find out what's popular.
Yeah, and I have. And that's worked great. It really has. I mean, the idea of, I even mix up the seed mixes.
Yeah.
I change brands of seed mixes just to keep it fresh, figuring, oh, maybe there's some bird on the outskirts that is suddenly going to be attracted to something that's in one of these, mixes that isn't in another. And that's worked great, with the exception of, and I had to go answer chat to wonder if anybody's going to mention the squirrels.
Yeah.
They mentioned the squirrels, of course. The squirrels have got an awful lot of favorites that are in an awful lot of the seed mixes. So, there's been the idea of, maybe restricting the seed mix to try and put out only stuff the squirrels don't like. But really, that's, I could play that game all day. And, I want to enjoy whoever's going to live there more than I want to fight with them. So
Plus you get
so
to
I don't know
taste
if I answered the question. I don't remember what the question was.
Well, plus you get to taste test all the wonderful different kinds of seeds.
That's what it is. Really, I get plenty of fruit and peanuts and seeds that way. I tried some Niger seed the other day, some thistle seed.
Did that taste good?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't.
Surprised.
It wasn't much.
Yeah.
There was only a little bit to it, but it tasted like sunflower seed or like any other seed.
Okay.
I think our range of appreciation for seeds has got to be limited, given how much the birds are picky about it.
So I know we wanted to keep our time short. So do you want to go over like 2 more species on here?
Sure. Let's look at another bird or
then,
two here before I fall asleep in my chair.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted already.
So the reason I'm playing this one, this is not one I don't think you get in the West Coast at least, but you mentioned frequency and how people hear. Can you even hear that one is one question.
I can.
Okay, good.
Because I have good hearing.
Yeah, so this is a thing that it's common with birders. Like if I was to, for example, let's pull up a cedar waxwing, because actually you get Bohemian waxwings out there sometimes, right?
You get cedar.
Oh, you get cedar. Okay.
We do.
Let's get cedar. Oh, right, you do get cedar.
I think we had one on my stream.
Cedar waxwing. So there's one that's a real like test of your hearing. So it's all those high-pitched things. That's the cedar waxwing. And not everyone will be able to hear it, because it is very common for people that as they age, age-related loss of high-frequency hearing is the most common, but also just work from loud environments, lots of concerts that are too loud, listening to loud music, all that stuff can deteriorate your upper frequencies. And a lot of birders who are like much, much older than me often say, well, I remember what year it was that I last heard a cedar waxwing, you know? I remember it was when I turned...
What kind of comment was that? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, it's common amongst... I've heard people of my age and younger...
It's very common, CB. For birders of your age,
no, I didn't say your age.
The cedar waxwing.
I'm saying that I like just ones that are older than me. There are ones that are younger than me too that say they can't hear it, and it's
all right. Well, I can hear it, so there, I can hear all those high-pitched
it's a good.
I've got good hearing, and I'm wearing decent earphones.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's mention that too, real quick. I absolutely find that the device I'm listening to, if I'm watching bird streams on my laptop, there's nothing to hear. If I put in headphones, I'm like, oh my God, listen to all that sound. So there's something to be said for realizing that you're losing an awful lot through modern technology too.
Yeah, exactly. Because I get this comment from my podcast a lot too, where like people who put on the headphones really hear the difference quite a bit. Like it is very different when you've got a pair of headphones or a really good speaker system or something like that. You hear the nuances because listening to something like this is a lot more like listening to classical music, right? There's going to be softs and louds. There's going to be various frequencies. Whereas something like top 40 pop music, they always compress that to push everything to the very top so that everything that happens is loud all the time, right? And so there's a stark difference.
Range.
Yeah, dynamic range is gone.
and you know, we lose a lot of that just even through the act of streaming it too. The streaming protocols are not expecting us to be playing classical music through our audio system. So
even me streaming it to my computer and then streaming out, there's already loss there too from it. But you can see it so clearly, right? But
that's another thing. Like when you said, "Oh, can you even hear that?"
Yeah.
Without being able to see it, it's like, well, I don't know whether I'd be missing it or not.
Yeah.
You know,
you might not notice.
See those pulses, right? To be able, again, it really enhances the ability to listen to it.
Exactly. And whereas if this bird was about half the frequency, it would be twice as loud to us, maybe even 3 or 4 times as loud to us.
Oh yeah.
Like right now, it's quiet, but look how dark that is. Like that darkness means it's actually loud. We just don't hear it as loud. Yeah. And so part of what I was saying was like
the Junco trills.
Yeah,
the Junco trills. All those traces were quite, in the middle of the screen, not in the top.
And they weren't as dark either, and they were so much louder.
But plenty loud. Yeah.
So part of what I was asking was in part actually just because of how high frequency it is, which makes it quieter and the compression and everything. I wanted to make sure you heard it because, I have noise canceling headphones on and I know what I'm listening for.
Right.
And not
right.
everyone in stream watching me know what they're listening for. But it is I do have to say this in the podcast often. I have to tell people, yeah, you're gonna be hearing this, and it's gonna be high frequency. Not everyone can hear that, so if you don't hear it, don't worry too much, because that's pretty common.
Right.
You can do tests for it. I actually do release a separate, like, just as a mention, I do actually release a separate version of the podcast for people who specifically have the more extreme high frequency hearing loss, where you lose the 5 kilohertz and above. So I've got this version called Songbirding Under 5 kilohertz, where I actually transpose all those higher birds 1 octave down.
Okay, so I was gonna ask this. I was absolutely just gonna ask.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any reason to transpose these things down, just for any reason at all? And wow, I had no idea.
That would be a reason.
And
yeah.
Wait. Layla in chat is just now talking about birding by sonogram, or having her older parents be able to participate in birding by listening to sonograms, but transposition.
Yeah.
Is this a common thing, Rob?
No, people don't do that usually. It's I have heard of people making devices that will actually, I'll play back some of that stuff so we have some background sound here. I have heard of devices being made that will transpose things down for you, like basically headphones, but then inside the headphones they're taking all those higher frequencies and tuning them down.
Right.
Oh, the recent ABA pod was about that. Interesting. So I missed. I haven't listened to that one yet, I guess. So
interesting. All right. Well, Layla, get somebody get that link up here in chat, because I'm interested in that too. I think I'm not too far from that, and it sounds like this is something that folks have thought about, and that here I was just complaining about we're losing frequencies from through technology, but here's a way that technology.
Yeah. So the ABA podcast is the American Birding Podcast, I believe, is the term you would search to find that. The ABA is an organization called the American Birding Association, and they put a podcast out that I believe, I always refer to it as well as the ABA podcast, but I believe the actual term is American Birding Podcast. And they're kind of a interview discussion kind of podcast with a little bit of news at the beginning about like what are all the rare birds that are being seen in North America right now, kind of thing. So let's see, there was one other I wanted to do and I was trying to remember what it was now.
Yeah, let's look at one more here.
I'm gonna grab my list and see what I have. You get yellow rumps there, but we've talked a bit of let's see. I'd be curious about what Stellar Jays sound, if they sound differently from, like, because I have no experience with Stellar Jays.
Yeah, they do.
If they sound similar to,
rockers.
Are they similar to Blue Jays is what I'm curious about, because Blue Jays are all over the place. They have their Jay call,
right.
That scream, but then they just have all these weird sounds they make all the time. They seem to make stuff up fairly often. If there's some weird sound you find in the woods and you're like, I have no idea what that is, it's usually, well, it's a blue jay just being weird, It's usually what I have. So I'm curious. That's a chickadee, isn't it? Let's see.
Not a Stellar Jay.
This might be misidentified. Oh, I bet it's that crackling.
There you go. It's that.
It's that crackling.
I was going to say, yes, Stellar Jays make some weird sounds.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's that.
There's a similar sound that blue jays sometimes make. Now, for some reason, the sound that they make that's similar to that reminds me of a very, very old telephone line. If you like it, I haven't heard a telephone line sound like this since the 80s, probably. But we had a really old copper line where when it rang, it had this deep bzzz kind of. And the blue jays sometimes make that sound. I don't know if I'd be able to find a recording of it, but off the top of my head.
I've heard that sound described as croaking sound.
Yeah. So there's the croaking.
Well, that's loud.
Yeah.
That's a loud one.
Someone was right up to it. Okay, that's a kid. I was like, wait. So this is a jay call.
Baby bird, where?
The recordings get off eBird, just so amazing. And this was recorded a few days ago in Arizona. I bet you anything. I'm just going to check something here. Oh no, this is an actual proper checklist. Okay. Because if you submit a recording from Merlin, you'll create this checklist of one bird. That'll be an incidental list. So I was wondering if this was just a
junk checklist.
Yeah, it might have been I don't want to call it junk. Yeah. I don't want to call it junk because there's going to be a lot of those now with Merlin, the way it does things, but it is yeah.
An unnamed clip, basically.
Okay, I wonder if there's a longer one.
That's more the sound I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
The chatter.
Yeah, I call it chatter too. There's something similar Orioles do that I call chatter that sounds like that. I've never learned that term anywhere, so it's interesting you came up with the same term.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, it sure seems like what they're,
Yeah, they're just going.
It's not a call. It's not a song. It's
And
it's not clicking either. It's definitely a vocalization. That.
Yep. So are these all vocalizations of Stellar's J, you think?
I could believe it. Yes, I could believe that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they certainly do have some higher pitched sound too, where it's more of a squeaking thing. And they can get screamy. Not quite so much as a scrub jay, but they can get screamy.
That's neat. Okay, and this looks screamier.
There you
tell.
Go.
Look at those.
That's what I was talking about.
Look at that spectrograph. That looks like screams. So let me just mention here for a moment, so you can see these lines at different things. You saw in that previous one, actually, with that kid talking, what the human voice is like, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same kind of thing, except just lower. Mm-hmm. The human voice also has these overtones, undertones, and all that. So when someone's talking, they tend to take over a lot of the spectrograph, but at the lower half of it. But a bird like a jay, a crow, all that, they take over the entire spectrograph often.
Right. So that's the interesting reminder. Is as much as we're hearing here, we're only hearing the lower part of this, of what you're looking at here.
Yeah.
Like that spectrum goes all the way to the top.
Yeah.
As high as that microphone can detect. And there's more that it's cut off. That's pretty impressive. That's well outside the range of our hearing. So yeah, that screaminess there. We've seen 3 different sounds that a Stellar's jay makes. They really do make a lot of different noises.
It reminds me of like chickadees when they're mad or trying to warn people about like a predator or something like that. They make these cross-cutting sounds like this, where I call them cross-cutting, just they go across the spectrum like this. And it's a technique also that birders use called spishing, where they go shh, 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 like that. It kind of simulates what wrens and chickadees and others do, and jays in this case, that gets birds riled up. Like some birders will do this in order to see what birds are in a spot because they're all hiding down or something like that. And let's say you're doing a bird count and you're like, well, I don't have time to sit here for an hour to count, the 10 or 20 birds here. So you do this spishing thing and it cross-cuts the frequencies. A whole bunch of them come up and talk to you. Basically, they scold you back or they come and look to see what's going on. And that's fascinating.
You're spamming, basically.
Exactly.
You're
basically
it's a spam. Spamming the channel here.
And that's what the frequencies would look like if you did go psh, 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 like that. It would be all those frequencies all at once. And rather than a song.
That's great.
So there you go.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, they have that monkey sound, as you said in chat.
You don't get Stellar's jays out there,
No.
Rob?
Blue jay is the only... Okay, I shouldn't say only jay. We have 2 jays in this region-ish. You get blue jay and Canada jay. But the Canada jay is very limited. Like where I live, I would have to drive about 4.5 to 5 hours to see one. They're very friendly. They're very cool birds, but the habitat they actually require a huge amount of acreage, hectareage of forest to support just a single couple. And so they have left southern Ontario the last, just to give you a context of how deforested southern Ontario has become. When the Christmas bird count that I am right now coordinator of for this city, Hamilton, it started in 1922. That very first count had a pair of Canada jays in it, and I think about 3 years later they had one more, and those were the last ones ever seen in the Christmas bird count. Were in the early 20s, and after then they were gone because the forests just slowly diminished and disappeared, and there just wasn't enough connectivity, I guess, to support.
It hit their tipping point, basically.
Yeah, they hit their tipping point for leaving the region, basically, at that point. And since then, there's this weird vagrant once in a while, maybe, and that's about it. But even that, I haven't heard much of. And so, as much as we got 2 jays around here, it's kind of like, well, I have to drive for like 5 hours to get one.
Right. It's not fair to count them, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's in the same province. Yes, but the problem is Ontario is gigantic. It is huge. It's bigger than Texas, and it touches the Arctic. So, yeah, it's in Ontario, but so is Willow Ptarmigan, and I'm never going to see Willow Ptarmigan.
Sure. I get that too. People will say, "Oh, I understand you've got such and such a bird in California."
Yeah.
It's like, wow, California is a big place. There's whole areas of California that have animals that we'll never ever see here. So.
Yeah. Oh, someone mentioned timberjack. It's actually whiskey jack is the other term for the Canada jay. They recently had a renaming. They were the gray jay. Now they're the Canada. They used to be the Canada jay. Then they were the gray jay. Now they're the Canada jay again. But there's always been this more colloquial term, the whiskey jack. It's based on both an Indigenous name, but I believe that Indigenous name is also based on just the call they make. It does sound like Wendijack, something like that. So.
We're going to claim them soon enough anyway. It's going to be the California jay. We're claiming all the birds.
Exactly.
That's how California is.
I'll let one more question in because there is a highlighted question there. It says, is it common for birds with different accents in different areas? And that's absolutely a thing, for sure. Birds have accents just like people. And if you let me just kind of go off on a slight tangent here, what I think is really fascinating about the amount of recordings we're making now and in the last few decades, just the few that are out there, I would love to spend some time going through some of the oldest recordings of species, because we know that those songs have got to be drifting over time too. Because there is documented evidence of, for example, the white-throated sparrow changing its song in the last 10 years. And the evidence of that has actually detected not only that happening, but where it started and how it spread. So now most of the western population of white-throated sparrow has a slightly different song now than they did 10, 15 years ago, because this variation is spreading. Yeah,
that's mind-blowing. Yeah, I've never thought about that. The idea that there's bird songs that we will never hear, that people heard just 100 years ago, 50 years ago.
Exactly.
That our immediate ancestors heard different bird songs that we won't hear anymore.
Yep. The first thing that alerted me to this was the northern cardinal, because even though I wasn't a heavy-duty birder when I did go down I was down in Arizona in 2009. I had heard enough cardinals in my life to know what they're supposed to sound like. And I remember being in Tucson being like, this cardinal doesn't sound right. And then a couple of years later, I went to Florida and I was like, this cardinal doesn't sound right either. But they're the same species, so what's going on here? And it's the regional variation in the song. And one of the most kind of complex examples there is of this is the song sparrow, which is all across North America, but the song sparrow's got such a complex song that even regionally there can be huge differences. I actually came across someone in the field last year. So rare for me to come across another recordist in the field, let alone someone who was doing a personal project to record as many song sparrows in southern Ontario as he could, to compare their spectrographs and pick out variations He has something like 200 different individuals that he's recorded as of last year, and he's been studying the various differences of those songs just regionally. But even just when I recently went down to Allegheny, like Song Sparrow sounded a little different there too. But if you go to the West Coast, Song Sparrow is just unrecognizable to me. Let's see if we can pull up some different ones. See, that's
when you say unrecognizable, come on, would you, I mean, really unrecognizable, or more like you'd say that's the weirdest sparrow you've ever heard? It's in the same way that somebody's accent, if I hear someone with a southern accent, that's very, very different from what I'm hearing, but well, I can understand them.
Part of the problem is that there's this thing called Savannah Sparrow, which sounds similar to Song Sparrow, but much higher pitch. And then there's Vesper Sparrow, which has the same vocal range, but has a different song, but has the same style kind of to it. Like, it's like, yeah, you could believe that if a Song Sparrow got confused and got raised by Vesper Sparrows, maybe it would sing that. Like, I sometimes refer to this as voice, that like, yeah, these two birds have the same voice, but they have different songs, or they have the same. It's like, when someone's speaking German, but you don't know German, and you know two different German voices, and when they're saying different things. That is one comparison I'll make between like the black-throated green warbler and the black-throated blue warbler. You could totally believe that those two birds could sing each other's songs because of the voice range that they project and the sounds they make. But they would never do it.
Another classification tip for me to think about that. Like, could you imagine that bird possibly, being capable of making those vocalizations?
I shouldn't mention those things without just playing back what those sound like so you can hear what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's not a very loud one. Let's go with the louder. There we go. It's not a great recording, but I think he gets the point across. It's very buzzy, and we'll hear what it sounds like here in a moment again.
Buzzy.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that description. So there's that too, you've always got words to describe what they sound like. And when you say them, I go, oh yeah, that sounds right. But I'd be hard pressed to have come up with those words myself.
Black-throated blue.
Maybe that's a matter of experiencing and having to come up with words to describe something.
So there's the black-throated blue.
And I knew that was going to be buzzy by what it looked like.
Yep. They're completely different songs, but I could imagine one bird singing the other song from the way they sound.
Especially at the end, that buzz part at the end. That's a vocalization that we didn't hear the juncos make. We don't hear jays make.
So that's what if you go to the West Coast and hear a Song Sparrow, and you come here and hear a Song Sparrow, that's the kind of difference they have, like over that regional variation, that they somehow just have this completely different song, similar voice.
But there you go. But it is similar enough that you can say, oh yeah, that's the kind of a sound that a sparrow can make. So
I'm going to toss in one other species, because it is one I will be coming across, and that you do have locally, but you probably don't have at your feeder, that's for sure. It's going to be more in forests for you, and that's Townsend's warbler.
We do have Townsend's warbler.
And I find them kind of similar to the black-throated green. Not as buzzy. That's interesting. So I'm starting to learn here a little bit, but I know they're related genetically to black-throated green warbler. There's even some hybridization sometimes.
See, we get warblers so rarely here that I don't have enough samples to think, oh yeah, I've like heard what a warbler looks like. I've seen it.
Yeah.
But
that sounded like black-throated green to me, so that's interesting. So wait for this. There'll be a couple seconds before we hear it again, but it's similar voice again. Little thinner at the beginning, but then thicker at the end. So again, I could believe this bird could sing the black-throated green warbler song, or songs. They actually have two. There's another variant for you. Some birds do have two songs or more. So
well, even the J and the different, again, I don't want to call them songs, but the very different kinds of vocalizations.
Jays are like, they're like people. They have that variation on, like, they just don't have one thing they do. They do so much. Whereas a lot of these warblers, they'll have one or two songs and then a lot of calls that are very chippy and stuff, but you won't see like a huge variation like you do in the Jays. All right. I think that's
let's
been pretty
see,
fun.
Rob. I think we said we were going to do half an hour.
I know. We went way over. My God.
We're pushing an hour and a half.
I wanted to stop, but I was like, well, am I being a jerk if I stop? Because he did tell me to keep it capped, but still.
Well, I don't want you to be a jerk. I mean, at the point when you were starting to like suggest that I was ready for a hearing aid, I don't know. Oh, gosh. Well, I tell you what, Rob, this has been absolutely super fun.
Oh, it's been hilarious. It's been great.
Let me thank you so much for having me on your stream.
Yeah.
And thank you for for what you do. I make great use of the eBird app and the Birdsong ID apps on my phone, as should everybody, because really pretty darn amazing. And it's this, I mean, folks realize that what's happening here is not just because Rob likes to look at cool spectrograms. All this stuff, he's classifying these, chopping out these sound samples, carefully identifying them, and then uploading them up into eBird's databases. And that is how these apps work. These apps work by grinding all that data. And and if it wasn't for Rob, and I'm being very serious here, if it wasn't for Rob carefully recording and identifying and slicing out all this stuff, we wouldn't have those apps. And I know that some of you make use of them too. And if you don't, oh my gosh, just pick one. They're all good. Merlin, eBird, really spectacular to be able to point your phone out and look at it and go, oh, it's a dark-eyed junco. Really helpful for being able to get started learning bird songs.
Well, this is also partly why I like to encourage people to get recorders and get out there, because it is a good tool just even for learning. Like, just when I first got one, it was just great for me to just put a, before Merlin was out, I would put it wasn't even that expensive. It was like a $30 microphone onto my iPhone. It gave it a 20 dB boost. Enough that you could capture, because what people don't realize is maybe to your ears a bird is nice and clear, but when you record and then you go home and you listen to it and went, wow, that highway over there was really loud, because your brain is just throwing that information away, because the highway's there and you're listening for that one thing, but the recorder doesn't lie, right? But it was great to do that, because then anytime I was like, I don't know what that is and I can't seem to track down the bird to see it, so record it. Later on I'll figure out what it is, so that's a great way of learning birds. But it's also great because you can contribute to databases on eBird, Macaulay Library, so on. And I always want to hear recordings from different places and all that. One of my secret goals when I released the podcast was I was hoping someone would mimic it somewhere else in the world somewhere, so I could be like, yeah, now I know what birds in New Zealand sounds like because someone made a podcast like that there. Hasn't happened yet, but someday.
They'll catch up to you, Rob.
Hopefully.
They're going to catch up to you.
Yeah. But this is partly why I'm really going to enjoy going out to Alberta to record some new stuff, so that I'll have some new content that isn't just Ontario, Great Lakes, all that. I'll have some new stuff that'll be out there.
And when is that going to be? 2 weeks?
In a couple of weeks, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing and hearing the results.
Yeah, we'll hear some results on that.
Of your trip.
And maybe we'll do this again soon if you want to do it again, and we'll go through some through some more bird songs.
I tell you what, we'll ask chat over the next couple days whether or not that this was any fun. Yeah. And if we hear crickets, if it's like, oh yeah, that was a lot of fun, you guys.
There you go.
Then we'll know. Yeah. We'll do it again, Rob. We just won't bother to live stream. It'll just be you and me.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's part of my goal is bird streaming. There's not very many bird streamers. I thought it'd be good to get two or more talking, because a lot of them are very solo streams, right? And having that, it's nice to have chat. It's always great to have chat, but you're not always, when you're starting out as a bird streamer, you're not going to have very many people in chat, right? So you're going to have to fill a lot of dead air yourself, which is what I sometimes feel like when I'm doing, a stream like this on my own that's indoor, because there's not going to be a lot of questions or anything. So this is really fun and great to have you here for that reason, and just finally get to chat with you, because, we've been on each other's channels for ages.
Right.
Now.
Well, it's certainly a different experience for me too.
Yeah.
I mean, to have this kind of two-way stream going on.
Yeah.
I will say, and for the benefit of all of our friends, I'm not good at this. I do not know what the heck I'm doing up here.
You're doing great.
I feel like I've been out here for way more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's time for me to say, "Come and get it, Birbs," and like go get a cup of coffee and let the Birbs present the show.
Exactly.
So what I was going to say though is that and I think this is probably unique to me as a streamer, but I am used to being able to read and respond to chat live.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yes, me too.
This has been disconcerting for me in that I'm paying attention to you and I'm looking at your stream, and I feel like I'm missing people talking to us in chat. And normally I'd have the luxury of being able to respond right away. So friends, I thank you so much for coming and joining us here. And I know I shouldn't say, people shouldn't say they're sorry for stuff because it's the way it is.
It's a common
streamer thing. But I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to chat with you as much as I would have liked to while we were doing this, but I guess I can't do all the things. No,
so. It's the eternal struggle for many streamers when they're doing things and chat is busy. But
I don't know how you guys do it.
Here's the lovely thing though, is that unlike most streamers, you're alive pretty much 24/7. So if anybody's got a question, they could just drop in your chat and ask the question.
That's the best they're going to get.
Right?
I'm not going to walk all the way out there and answer their question.
No, that's true. But you can reply in chat, right?
It's true. It's a different dynamic, and I know I've got it good in that way.
Yeah,
I know that
because most streamers, once they turn off the stream,
right? Everybody else is got to focus on presenting their stream. And, I get the luxury of being able to be a viewer in my stream instead of being the presenter 99.9% of the time. This is hard. This is not easy.
There you go. Something new.
All right. Well, let's I'm gonna wrap myself up. I'm gonna say au revoir, friends, and thank you again, Rob, for having me. It's been an absolute delight, and I'll let you cut me off, or I don't know if I'm supposed to.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll set up a raid to your channel.
Oh, all right. If you're ready to wrap up, I don't know if you're really
I think I'm going to wrap up. I think this was awesome. This is good. I am happy.
You need to go for another couple hours.
No,
come on, you're getting lazy here.
As I say, I got usually the time limit, then I get like a little tired when it gets to usually 2-hour mark for me. But I'm not usually constantly chatting during it. I'm usually focused on something or whatever. So. Yeah, we need to choose a surprise raid message. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Kamal. This has been awesome, and I'm really happy. We'll do it again soon, and hope we all y'all have a good night, and we'll see you over at
y'all later, friends.
CaliforniaBirbs.
Thanks for coming.
All right.
Now we need to figure out how